Hello, everybody. Maybe we can start so that we are not too late with this seminar. So my name is Jean-Marc Josecad. I'm a professor at the University of Rennes, and I'm also Vice President of Informatics Europe. And it's my pleasure today to introduce this seminar on gender equality in informatics organized by Informatics Europe in collaboration with UGAIN. So before leaving the floor for the actual seminar, I will take a few seconds to introduce Informatics Europe, to just tell you the context in which these seminars are taking place. So Informatics Europe has been created in about 15 years ago as the representative of the Department of Research and Teaching of the University of Europe. And Europe has to be understood here as a continent, not a political entity. So our members are institutions such as department, institute, faculties, research labs, and also company who have research centers in informatics. So the member is, of course, an institution, but it means that everybody part of this institution are part of Informatics Europe. And most importantly, of course, Informatics Europe is a non-profit membership association that is established in Switzerland. Today, we represent about 45,000 researchers teaching probably more than 500,000 students. Concretely speaking, that's about 160 institutions from over 30 different countries across Europe, with a sizable growth rate each year. So you have this map of Europe, extended Europe, I would say, and you have the full members list on our website. If you are not yet a member, please consider it, because the more we are, the louder our voice is to defend the informatics at European level. We first want to speak for a common voice to safeguard and shape the quality research and education in informatics in Europe. We want to promote concerted position and acts on shared priorities in the areas of education, research, and social impacts of informatics. And we foster pan-European knowledge and transfer collaboration between academia and industry and society, including government and public institutions. Our activities are mainly performed by scientists, volunteers, professors like you and me, who commit personally to promoting our missions and goals. We want to help shape the future of the discipline, also making sure that the specific voice of Europe is heard, and we want to defend the specificities of our continent, especially with the vision that is elsewhere, especially in the US or in China, for instance, where the vision of privacy concerns and many other aspects is slightly different from the one of Europe, and we want to defend our European point of view on that. So we have several working groups on, for instance, education research, on ethics, on diversity and inclusion, on open science, on data analysis and reporting, sustainability, and policy recommendation. And we have a number of partnerships with many sisters organizations and other things, including this UGAIN project. We have a number of services. Please refer to the website to see all of them. The new one that we are developing this year is a PhD award for the best PhD dissertation from the previous year. So it's all on the web page. And we have also a number of awards, in particular the one given in the context of UGAIN. We organize each year a summit, which is the annual gathering for research and education policymakers at all levels. That is called the European Computer Science Summits. And this year it's going to happen in Edinburgh in late October. And this is really the place where we gather all the leaders and also would-be leaders of our institution gather to discuss common strategic and policy issues in informatics shared across Europe. We cover topics such as education, research, funding, entrepreneurship, management, and career development. And specifically this year, we include a leaders workshop that is co-organized with UGAIN, and an early career workshop for PhD students and postdocs and young, I would say, assistant professors, as well as 2 sessions with industry. We recently opened a job portal for academic position, and we have an Informatics Europe CV repository, which is new. Please look at the website if you're interested into that. So there are many things, so you can follow us on these social networks. And it's time for me to give the floor to UGAIN, which is this course project that is funded by the European Union that is co-organizing with us this seminar. So the seminar is going to be given by Susan McKeever from TU Dublin, and it's the case study of gender balance initiative in computer science. So please, Susan, carry on.
Thanks, Jean-Marc. I'll just share my slides now, 1 second. And if someone could confirm that they can see.
Yes.
That's there. Okay. So it's very nice to be speaking to you today, and thank you very much to Informatics Europe for the invitation to do this webinar. And I'm delighted to be bringing you a case study in how we have worked on closing the gender gap in computer science at the School of Computer Science at Technological University Dublin. And my name is Susan McKeever, as you can see. And just going on to the sort of main components of what I'm going to talk about, I first of all will explain who we are. Technological University is Ireland's 2nd largest 3rd level education institution. In terms of size, we're about 29,000 students now, and obviously we're located in Dublin. Okay, the school itself, now let me just emphasize, because there may well be people across TU Dublin who be aware of this, who are on the webinar. There are 3 schools of computing related study within TU Dublin, because we merged in the last few years from 3 organizations to 1. I'm just covering the School of Computer Science, and in terms of the scale of where we're at, we're about 1,000 undergraduate students, 300 postgrads, and we have about 60 active PhD students on our books now, staff group of 44. And at this point in time, we're at about 20% plus, depending which course we're on undergraduate female students. That fluctuates. So we have been higher, we've just dropped a little bit recently. But I'm going to explain the sort of journey that we've been on since back in the days when we were far lower than that. Okay, so just for context on where I'm coming from at this, in terms of Informatics Europe, we won 2 awards around this space, and these are the Informatics Europe Minerva Equality Awards. We're the runner-up for the Student Recruitment and Retention Award, encouraging female students to enroll in computer science programs. And then we also, in a later year, won the Minerva Equality Award for developing the careers of female faculty. So actually gender balance and related on the staff side. So what I'm going to talk about first, I'm going to talk about both of these, but I'm going to start with the student one and take you through where we came from and what we did. Okay, so let's go back to Ireland 2013. And we knew we had a problem of where we were at on gender balance across our computer science courses. And we wanted to see what the national picture was. So we got all the data. It was easier back then to get the data to look at. If you looked at the computing programs across Ireland and looked at the percentage along here of what the percentage of girls was versus, females versus males, this proportion, over 40%, were right over on the left-hand side of the graph at less than 10%. And you can see that it's very much a curve with almost all the courses far, far below the sort of 29 to 29. So, and we were in this curve over here on the left-hand side as well. So a pretty grim picture. So back in 2013, our School of Computer Science was when we measured the first year intake of females, was in and around 10%. Typical of the national pictures I've just shown you. And really, there was a group of us in the school thought, we have to change this. The 10% figure was just something that we felt we ought to be able to do something about. And we've come, as a lot of computer science schools did, we've come from a much higher picture back in the previous 10 or even 15 years before I was in the organization. And we were in this slump of 10%. So moving over to 2021 then, which this case study is covering 2013 to 21, we had a major increase in the uptake of computer science. We were on an average of over 20%, and we had a new program at 42%, which was in about its third year of operation then. Critically, we'd had a major change in ethos, and a major gender balance awarenesses across computer science was in operation. So a very different picture, from 10% over to between 22 and 42%, depending on whichever undergrads you looked at, over in 2021, over an 8-year period. Okay, so I'm going to bring you through what we did. So we basically undertook initiatives across a number of areas. So the first was around communication, which is actually talking to our students. A second critical one is around deciding on new programs. A third one is things that we did at national level. And then fourth year, crucially, around mentoring. So we'll take each one of these on its own. So let's start with communication. So the very important people to talk to first is we talked to our current students. And this was as simple as, you want to make them feel comfortable. We organized just for all our female students, come along to a pizza lunch and we want to talk to you very casually, nothing too informal. You could see the group there. And we asked them a number of things. Why did you pick computer science? How's it going? Do you like it? Are you enjoying it? And then based on your knowledge, how do we get more females in to take these degrees? And we had a fantastic session at this. It was just one of my highlights in the organization so far. And we put together their output, and some of it wasn't easy to hear. So here's a typical one from one of the students. It was one of my first labs. I stood at the door. There was already a big group of lads in there making a lot of noise, generally rowdy, no other girl around. The lab assistant was sitting in the corner, not paying any attention. And then this is the painful bit. I really wanted to turn around and run. I nearly did, but I went in and sat quietly, too mortified to ask anyone how to get started. And you know, the worst thing is that not only will there be more females of our student base who have had this feeling, but there will have been ones who did turn around and run and decide, I'm not going to stay in there. So it was hard to hear this feedback. And there are plenty of other feedback, and I'm going to give you a set of those. That's the one that I've just read to you. But other people emphasized, you know, the creativity. Nobody ever says how creative it is to work in computer science. I found out about it by accident. I want to let other females know that they can do this course. It teaches you how to be inventive. This is from someone who'd studied dental nursing first. I love it. It's so creative. And then another person, I can sum it up in one word why girls don't pick comp sci, maths. Everyone thinks it's about maths. I have no one to be friendly with in my class. So two themes were coming out there. One is people didn't know what computer science was really about. And then secondly, the experience itself was pretty intimidating. There was various other findings, but these were really important ones. Okay, so having done that, immediately we had to do some things. So the first thing, very basic, easy we did was every lab group with female students in it, you have to have at least 2 female students. So when you get your first year intake, figure out how many females you have. And when you're creating up your lab groups, then you make sure that none of them are allocated to a lab group on their own. That's very easy. That's a 5-minute exercise. And it's something that we've done ever since. Another thing was, well, we want them to be able to make friends. So regular meetups for students, easy-ish. Yeah, and we've a lot that we've done in that space. And I'll describe a little bit more on that. And then thirdly, examine what computer science programs are popular with females. We know that there are some more popular than others. Why is it that on our graph, we've got most of them at 10%, but there are still some of them on 20, 30, 40%. What's going on? Okay, so to find out what computer science programs were attracting the most females, we had to dig into the data. So we went and we examined the intakes into first year on all computing related courses in Ireland for 2014, 2015, and then we did it again in 2020. It was much more difficult then. We had to do it through our contacts, but back in 2014 and 15, the data was published in a way we could easily get it, but now you can't do that because of GDPR. So We were able to get it from our National Education Authority, and we got 2020 data from a network that we set up that I'm going to talk about in a couple of minutes. So what computer science programs are attracting most females? Okay, so let's look at this then. The answers that we got were BA in Psychology and Computing, 53%. Comp Sci International with a language, where you study a foreign language, 42%. These are the 2020 figures. Creative Media and Interactive Design, Digital Humanities and IT, and so on and so on. We have the full list. You can see the pattern here of what's going on. And just looking at that in a slightly different way, if you take a word cloud of computing program titles, of the program titles that have more than 20% female uptake, here's what it looks like. You've got arts, media, digital, multimedia, a lot of different words. There isn't a whole lot of computer science appearing there. So the actual, if you go back to the list of courses, there isn't a pure comp sci program that appears in that top list. The nearest we get to it is Computer Science International with the language. So what we were seeing immediately is programs with higher female intakes are not computer science on its own. The popular computing programs have applied or complementary skills. For example, computer science with the language, business computing, IT management, green IT, digital media, and so on. And we term those hybrid programs. And we know from the research that we've done, which is in general, everything is in general, females are more interested in programs that don't sink all their eggs into one basket, that have a sort of extra domain aspect to it where you apply it and you apply it to the real world. And B, don't go just for the pure tech courses in the same number as the male students. So it's this concept of real world programs and then not an over specialization in tech. There's actually research that shows that in terms of skill base, females tend to have a greater spread of skills, where males tend to have a more concentrated spread of skills when they're at second level. And that reflects in their choices then at third level. But it's absolutely crucial for us to understand this. We cannot crack the computer science tech skills shortage amongst females until we crack what we're offering to them at third level. So hybrid programs, as we've termed them, are really crucial. Okay, so the action that we took was we established our own hybrid program. It's called computer science, so it still has a computer science brand, but it's international, which means that they are learning a foreign language. And what we've had is a consistently higher proportion of females since we started this in 2017 on this program than on our pure computer science program. And the 42%, the magic number 42%, when we pulled the data in 2020 was the proportion of females that we had on this program. And it's double that of our other comp sci programs. So this is a really high impact strategy. If we can make the right third level offerings at third level, the right programs available, then we can start to see more of an input of females onto our courses. This is what we're finding. And of course, in terms of supplying the tech industry with skills, somebody who's learned a foreign language or some other complementary skill with computer science is perfectly qualified in the computer science sector. They're not losing anything per se in terms of being qualified to enter the sector. So it's really something we need to think about. Okay, here are some other side things that we did. We also took any opportunity where we sought for gender activity. So this is another example. We were approached by a not-for-profit called Code First Girls, and they said, can you help us to put our free coding courses available out to non-tech female students in your university? This is back in 2016. And since we were in the zone of being positive about everything towards gender balance and trying to do our best, we said, sure. So we were the first ones to do it in Ireland. And we've had at least 250 females so far who've gone through tech coding courses. It's minimal effort because Code First Girls supply all the materials. It's zero cost because it relies on industry volunteer staff. And it's really good, both PR and actual hardcore skills. And we've actually had a transition of some of the females who were studying on these, on non-tech courses, have transitioned into our own courses within computer science because they were part of the cohort that said, I never knew that it was so creative, and I really like doing coding, and in their case, they were either doing Python or developing websites, and they took to it, and they get to discover it. Okay, another action that we then looked at is, what are other computer science schools doing throughout the country? Because we knew that every school of computing in Ireland were working on that graph with the poor figures and female proportions, and they're working on the female pipeline problem. So it was a no-brainer to think, why are we not working together, and why don't we share ideas? Because we knew there were some really great initiatives. So in 2017, myself and a colleague in another university decided to set up a network of people. So we contacted all 18 higher level organizations in Ireland, all 18 universities and institutes. And now we have a network of every school of computer science or computing, whatever the name is that they have in Ireland, working together. That's a very powerful network. That's just the official name for it, the Irish Network for Gender Equality in Computing. It's at that website. And the reason it's useful is it allowed us immediately to share best practices. So immediately we were able to say, this is what we're doing that we think is working. What are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? And try to share instead of all reinventing the wheel. And that's a picture from our first meetup, or one of our first meetups. The second thing is it's a really good vehicle for funding. If you have a group that's reaching into a whole clatter of universities on the ground, that's very powerful. The third thing is it's a very large accessible pool for data and surveys. So for example, the data about which courses are popular with the female-male splits, we can't get that data unless we go through this network. That's why we were able to get our 2020 data for the female versus male proportions coming onto courses and compare across courses. And we're at the moment, we're also doing something called a sense of belonging survey across our universities, and we're able to put that out across the third levels in Ireland. So it's very useful as a very pragmatic tool base for getting data. And then the fourth one is a really soft benefit, which is it's fantastic for networking. All the time I'm going into my contact list and people I've met at the meetups and contacting them for research and for all sorts of other things. So it's been very powerful. Okay, an example of a funded project that was funded as a result of Ingenic, as a result of this network, we were able to get funding for a project called TechMate. And that the purpose of that, it's by a PhD student running the project, and she may well be on the call now, Alina Berry. And the best practice toolkit for gender equality in computer science, she's producing a best practice toolkit that will be available then for others. It's also part funded by Huawei and the Irish government. So that's just an example of what we've been able to do as a result of this network that we created ourselves to get funding. And there are many other funded projects that we have. Okay, now the last of the four sort of areas that we worked on to hit student retention is the STEAM initiative. And this is the vision, motivation, execution of one of our staff called Leslie Shoemaker. And what Leslie envisaged was a whole combined mentoring scheme whereby female students across comp sci and engineering were offered an industry mentor, and they get to see role models from industry. And these are, you can see the scale of what's going on here. These are pictures from our STEAM meetups. So monthly lunches at TU Dublin with industry, alumni, trained mentors, support, advice, networking, confidence, all about showing how you can actually succeed in this area, and you can make friends and you can make contacts and you can network, which is something that sometimes it can be difficult for us to do when we're in the minority. Okay, other smaller initiatives that we do as well. I mean, so many people do these, but we have a gender balanced week-long computer science summer camp, summer school. We've got senior school, age 15 to 16, workshops at TU Dublin. We've got school visits and various other things. These are quite labor intensive, and they're quite hard to measure the outcomes on, but they're the sort of things that are important because you've got females in here who are discovering computer science for the first time. So you're sort of playing it forward for all the universities. If every university does this, then you hit enough that you're actually getting this opportunity. And there's since the case study was done and we've merged with two other, the TU Dublin has become the merger of three organizations. We have a lot of activity going on in this area in one of our other schools, and we can tell you about another time. Okay. Now, the other thing I'd like to point out is management support and culture. This is really critical. We have had constant support from management during the period of time that I'm talking about. Gender issue has been made one of our school's strategic priorities, not just in name, not just because they have to, it really is at the heart of what our school is about. During the time of this case study, we had a female head of school for 10 plus years. Now, that's not a strategy, you can't just go and make that happen, but that was very high impact. It really was coming from the top then, the drive to get more females into the pipeline. The other thing we've had is a national framework, a national policy of change. And I'll give you an example. National research funding from our main science foundation is conditional on a certain proportion going to females. So it's actually written into their policy. And that's very powerful. So the extent to which you can be supported in the background by national policy is really critical. Again, not easily influenced, but if Ireland is doing it, other countries are doing it. But an environment that's genuinely interested in change is critical. Okay, now that's what I just covered there with the student initiatives. And we've seen real change from that. What I'm now going to mention, but more briefly, is on the staff side, because we won the staff award for helping to develop careers of female faculty. And there's a couple of things I'd like to point out on this side. Okay, so pre-2012, this is what the staff profile looked like in our school. We had 30 full-time equivalents, 30 staff people, and we had 20% female academic staff. Our senior academic leadership team at the time was 100% was men, and our school executive team and our head of school, all male. So it wasn't great in terms of representation in the management team, and not particularly good on gender balance either, although 20% would probably be something that some schools would be very happy with, but we could see there was room for improvement. Now, I'm going to skip forward to where we are today on that. You'd excuse me. Well, sorry, this is by 2019 when we finished this program. We had 55, we've grown to equivalent of 55 full-time equivalents of staff, 36% gender balance. In the senior academic leadership team, we had 10 staff, 50%, so 50-50 gender split. The school exec team, 4 staff, and actually there's a poor gender balance because it's only 25% now. So 75% female, and we had a female head of school up to 2021. So that was a dramatic change in the picture. So let me just go through very briefly how we got to that, or at least things that we think influence this. So in 2012, when we looked at this, what we found was there was a lack of female applicants coming in to try to get in the first place. The academics post side, we weren't attracting female applicants. We then noticed there was a lack of progression of females to management or professor grades. So from 0 to 25%, it was very poor. We also noticed, and I think this is common, heavy loads of administration and kind of management administration style roles were being taken on by females. Females were tending to put their hands up or have their hands put up for them to do sort of administration heavy management tasks that aren't necessarily particularly associated with the sort of metrics that make waves in the academic community. Another very practical thing we found is how difficult it is returning after maternity leave. Teaching loads, gaps in your research output, it's really tough. And speaking from experience, it is a really tough time coming back in to try to pick up from where you were. And the last one is a really deep one. There are legacy networks and a culture of academic institutions that are created and populated by males. Historically, that's just because of the lack of balance. And it does take a long time to catch up to get more gender balanced networks and so on that take time. So this is all part of the environment. Okay, so there are really 4 aspects to what we sort of actively try to do on the staff gender balance initiative. And this is with a view to just getting more basic gender balance around the numbers coming in on our staff, and then what they're actually doing and how they're succeeding. And I'll take each of these 4 in turn. So let's look at the first one, which is source. So source, as we call it, was just simply, this is very informal. When a job vacancy arose, we informally identified female candidates external to our university or school, and we encouraged them to apply for the job. I mean, once they apply, they don't get any head start. we tried to use our network to at least make sure that females knew about the job applications that were coming up. And we used our own networks. So for example, one of our senior management team was coming back from the UK and realized she'd come back. So we were able to make sure, okay, you should apply for this job that's coming up, or at least be aware of it. And then it gives them a shot so that they know about it. And that often works well because it's well understood that females don't necessarily go for the job vacancies that they deserve to go for. This is a problem. So see what can be done at source to start encouraging talent to come to your school. You're not trying to poach, you're simply trying to make sure that females who are qualified to come are aware of it. The next one is career. Again, by nature of gender, sometimes the whole area around boosting skills, having a strategy around your career, having ambition and having confidence. First of all, we had a leadership program called the Aurora program, which originated in the UK. And all our female staff were invited to apply and in batches have done the Aurora leadership program if they were interested over the last sort of 7 to 8 years. And that is a really excellent sort of career planning and confidence boosting and networking opportunity for female staff. So that was the first thing. The second thing is, and this is pretty basic, an annual performance review for all staff, so for male and females. This was something that was going on in the university anyway, but we made sure that it was thoroughly done in our school and that it happened so that everybody, including females, were forced to think about what their actual career plans are over the next number of years. Some universities that, it's completely rigorously done year on year, and it varies from university to university. The next thing was research supports, giving research supports to all genders, but interestingly, in the context of the national picture of funding is that there has to be a minimum percentage of females allocated funding on various funding rounds. And that's very interesting. So for example, we've had a PhD scheme whereby we've got funding for group level of PhDs, and a minimum percentage of female supervisors and students have to be involved. That's very powerful. And then the last thing is a mentoring scheme that was run across the university and within the school, male and female, but we made sure that both genders apply and take advantage of it. These are for both male and female largely, but just to make sure that females are taking part in as much as they should be. The third thing is the environment. This is critical. So, gender equality has been a genuine heartfelt aim in our school. So in our university, one of our own School of Computer Science senior women was pivotal in setting up the Women Leaders in Higher Education group. So this is for the management level females in the university to create their own network and to make sure that they know each other and have events and network and meet for coffee and tell their stories and all the rest. And it has really created a powerful network. And men, of course, are invited to, if they wanted to attend and so on, but the priority is to make sure that at least the women are a network that they can actually get to know each other. The second background one is there is a UK scheme called Athena Swan, which is a national badge scheme for gender balance for universities. It applies in schools and it applies at university level. And the reason this is so crucial, there's gold, silver and bronze levels of Athena Swan, which is about getting gender balance. It has become a funding condition in Ireland to have Athena Swan on various funding schemes. And that really gets priority under people and under universities and schools when they start having to have a qualification. That's been also very pivotal. And in our sector, as I mentioned earlier, in our school, we triggered the National Network of Computer Science nationally in GENIX, which I've already covered. Okay, now the last one, to me, this is almost the most important one. And speaking as a female academic, it's the simple things to make life easier that for staff with personal commitments that can really make or break your ability to stay at certain times in your career when it's difficult. So if, for example, you go out on leave, and probably the biggest proportion of people going out on leave are female staff going out to have family. For example, minding your modules while on leave. Females were given the option when they return to have the modules that they were teaching given to them. And I think going back to when I came back after having my fourth child and came back, because this is before all of this, And I had 4 new modules in my first semester, which nearly sort of broke me. But then having seen that, it might have been a bit too late for me, but we were able to go back and say, well, that's one of the things that's really difficult. Just make it a little bit easier by having the option to take back your modules. The second thing was flexible work allocation. So having some autonomy over what you choose to do with your non-academic, with your teaching hours. And then the third thing, and I cannot overstate rather the importance of this, considerate timetabling. There may be a small number of years where there are certain times of the week or of the day where it's really difficult. There's really pinch point times. And this is for any male or female with personal commitments. If that's the level of communication that you can have within your school, I cannot overstate enough how crucial that is and where it can make the difference of enabling, in particular, a female staff person to stay on at their job and survive those crucial first years when they come back after maternity leave. Okay, so that's the picture of where we got to after all of this. I went through this earlier, and it's a far more gender balanced state than when we set out in this in 2012 and started on this journey. Okay, so the take-home points that I want to highlight are, and I'm going back across both the student and the staff pieces. The first one is on the student side. Hybrid programs are high impact for student numbers. This is a personal hobby horse of mine, having been in it from the beginning around discovering the patterns in the data. But certainly within the Irish context, hybrid programs are high impact for students. We can prove it with the numbers, we can prove it with our own experience. Secondly, a sense of belonging for your female students and for all your students is absolutely key. This is more difficult in general for any student in the minority, and today we're dealing with female students, but a sense of belonging is really key, and you have to put in place extra supports around meetups, communication, mentoring, and so on to help them along with that if they're in a minority. The third thing is the staff side. Simple supports for female staff really help, as I covered. The fourth thing is, we can't be complacent. I'm showing you a case study that goes up to 2 years, pretty much to when COVID hit in. And already we've had changes within our school, we've different staff, all sorts of things. We can't be complacent. We'll slip backwards if we don't keep on at this. It's a constantly changing environment. And COVID has played havoc with the student experience and having to teach online for a year and all sorts of things. So complacency has no place. The fifth thing is, so much time put into the gender balance activities is voluntary on behalf of the staff. And that's speaking personally too. You have to put money behind it. You cannot expect, and often this is the case, your female students or your female staff members to take on the tasks of trying to improve gender balance, or indeed any of your staff to take it on voluntarily. You must put commitment and money behind it. It's worth it. And the last one is, and that's related to the voluntary and the money, gender balance drive has to come from the top of the organization, and it has to come from the top of the school. And you have to really feel it. It can't be a duty. It has to be really felt. And once you have that, once that's coming from the top, it permeates right through different parts to every staff person. Okay, so that's the end of my presentation. I'm sorry if I've slightly gone over, and thank you very much for listening. And I'll stop sharing now.
Thank you very much, Susan, for this very nice talk and very impressive effort by TU Dublin on this respect. So I would like to open the session of questions if anyone has some questions. Please don't be shy. So maybe I'll start. Well, that was a set of impressive action with a lot of positive effect on the outcome that you have shown us. I would like to know if all of that could be transferable to other countries in Europe, or put it in another way, are there any specificities in the Irish culture that made it easier or more difficult to implement some of these changes? what is your
Okay.
opinion on that?
That's a good question, because it did occur to me that if I was sitting in the audience, I would want to know that, you know, this is what you did. Can I, or should we, can we do the same? To me, there's nothing in the steps that we've taken that is specific to the Irish context. But I have to caveat that. In the student side, the experience that we have with hybrid programs, which is that programs that are either applied or combined with another domain, I don't know the data by country in Europe. I know the pattern overall, but I don't know the individual data. So I would say for anybody from different countries here who are looking at this, find out what it is in your country. But the research supports, or appears to support, that it is the same in other countries. And I often look at different courses that I see, and I sometimes email the course director. I might see a course, for example, in Germany, and I see that it's this type of course, and I email the course director and say, what's the female balance on your course? And generally I get the answer back going, yeah, we have more females on this course, and they're aware of it. So I suspect that strategy can work anywhere, but it has to be data driven. And then in terms of there's nothing cultural in Ireland to me that has made this either easier or more difficult. You know, our students are just students, and they have the same needs as everybody. They need to feel like they belong. If there's only 10% females in a class, they have the same feeling of isolation or loneliness that any minority is going to have. And they want the sense of belonging and the sense of knowing each other and having friends and all the rest. So that communication piece, go talk to your students, get them talking, tell them what life is like for them, bring in ways for them to communicate with each other and so on. I think these are things that apply everywhere. The only difference, Jean-Marc, that I would say is different in the Irish context is I'm aware of research funding rules that have appeared in Ireland with our main funder, which is Science Foundation Ireland. I don't know if that's the case in other countries or not. And I think the legislative environment and the funding environment, any conditions you have around gender, it may differ by country to country. And so and that's a really big driver. That national picture is very important.
Thank you very much. Anyone has another question? Yes.
I would have a question, Jean-Marc. Yeah, here's Gerti from TU Wien. Thank you for your really impressive presentation. And we had similar experiences over the last 20 plus years. My question would be, you said this kind of hybrid programs are very kind of appealing for female students. And that then also some started to take more computer science related courses. Is there, do you also see a positive effect on the pure computer science programs, in the sense that, that there is some snowball effect perhaps, that then more female students also say, I'm interested in more technical stuff, and they go more in the computer science curriculums also?
No, Gertrude, I have to say, that's the first time I've ever been asked about that. And it's the first time I've ever thought about it that way. And I have to say that the answer is very likely yes, because we've had an increase. Our hybrid course is way and by far the largest on females, but we've also had an uplift on our two computer science courses that run in parallel. One is pure computer science and the other one is computer science infrastructure. And they're sitting in the same classroom. And, Dublin is a small place, and there's a word of mouth effect and reputation, all the rest that spreads through that. So I would say it most definitely has an effect, because once you start to have more females coming in on any course, your environment becomes more female friendly. It is by virtue of having more females, and you get the network effect. Very hard to quantify it, to attribute the change that we've had just to that, but it's inevitable that it has some uplift. And by the way, we also analyzed to see, were there females who would have applied for the other course, who've applied for example, for second choice, who went for the hybrid program instead? In other words, we're kind of cannibalizing our computer science course. And we've done that analysis, and they're going straight for the hybrid program and nothing else for the ones who went for that. So they're new female students, you know, so it's very useful for us to know that as well. But the more female students you have, the more female students you get. That's how it works.
Thank you. Any other question? So maybe we can stop here. Oh, no, sorry. Sorry,
No,
Gertie.
I don't.
Please, we have time. So
Just
please.
one thing, because you said also that you have the school courses for school students, pupils, summer courses, but they are very kind of infrastructure intensive and resource intensive. Yeah? I don't know how many kind of female students you can cover in this summer courses. But wouldn't this have an effect also in, at least in the sense that kind of they see that they are welcome, that they might be interested, that it is creative, as what the female students then said in your kind of testimonials.
Yeah, I mean, that was one of the things that I was really surprised when we talked to the students to find out how things were going, was that they were saying we had no idea how creative it was and how much fun it was to do computer science. These are for the ones who loved software development, who loved the visual side and so on. And that's the side hit, the side effect of running those computer camps that we have, which, by the way, we make sure they're gender balanced. We have to manage we don't necessarily make them female only, we make them gender balanced, and different people take different approaches. And that is it. The way it is in Ireland, females are less likely to be exposed to tech and computing than males are. And we've done a lot of work. And by the way, there's someone on the call here, Keith Quill, one of my colleagues, who has done amazing work in this area and going out to schools. But at the same time, in a general environment sense, you are more likely to have done programming and software development if you're male than if you're female. So, you know, we can't measure, we don't know, and in a sense, we don't even really care whether the students who we get on those camps ever come back to study with us. They may go somewhere else. But what I do think every School of Computer Science and Computing should do is do those camps. You're playing it forward for everybody. By doing those camps, you know, if you get a 10, 20%, whatever it is, conversion rate on the females to have introduced them and given them at least the chance to see this, then it doesn't matter where they study, you're sort of doing it because there's a kind of network effect in this anyway. So it's really important because it helps make a dent into that we never knew it was so interesting stuff. You know, like I had one female student who'd done, or female colleague actually, who'd done physiotherapy first. And she said, the reason she did it, she wanted to do computer science at the beginning. She thought, I think I'd like that. But she went into physio because she said, I didn't do computer science because I thought I'd be sort of working on my own in a basement, all by myself in isolation. And guess what? She did physio. And then sure enough, a year or two after she's finished physio, she's working on her own in a basement. And then she's like, what have I done? I should have done computer science. She went back to do it and discovered, of course, that she loved it and is extremely successful. So people have a misconception. They don't necessarily have the right perception of the types of things you can do, how much they're going to like it, and the varied types of careers you can have. And that's a real, and we have the extra complication here in Ireland. This is one difference. The majority of our schools are still single sex. So that's unusual. The majority of that's not third level, second level schools are still single sex. It's changing, but it does mean there's more of a siloing of tech exposure into boys' schools. But it is changing all the time. It is changing all the time.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
The skill you have been mentioned, would you like to add something to that, or talk about this.
Could you repeat that, Jean-Marc?
You were mentioning that Keith Kiel was working with you.
Keith, yes, Keith, yeah. That's right. Sorry, Keith, I didn't mean to pick on you in real time, but it's just impossible not to mention you because
I would like to give you the opportunity of adding
absolutely.
words
And just to reference, when this case study that this refers to, we weren't joined with the section of the university that Keith is now in. So he's this fantastic addition since all this case study was in execution. His whole school is we've merged with and so on. So Keith, over to you.
Wow, I didn't expect to be talking. Sorry, I was answering when you said that. Yeah, no, like we have some other initiatives. I mean, what Susan discussed today was really cool. So I'm sorry, I don't mean to take away from anything, but we are in a different school. We need to talk way more as we're slowly merging. Yeah, look, we've done similar things. I mean, not similar things. So I mean, not as defined as what Susan does. We do a lot of outreach, I guess. So Gertrude, I know you asked about some of that. We have in-person models. We have large-scale national MOOC models for it. And actually, specifically to the subject, one of our outreach programs for non-formal computing classes at K to 12, including primary, where it was to reduce misconceptions was the entire goal of it. Actually, one of my colleagues is hopefully submitting a paper, and one of our students, who's also a colleague, is submitting a paper on this. But it was open to any student in the country, and I think it was about 15,000 students that took part in the outreach, maybe 10,500 to 15. I can't remember the exact number. Sorry, I'm on the spot, so I have nothing prepared. But they, it was open to any school, any students, but in the first year it was like 70% males, 30% females taking it. But by the third year of the camp, it was flipped the opposite way around. So we had about 70% females taking our outreach camps and 30% males, give or take. And it was word of mouth. We didn't select them. We didn't pick disadvantaged schools. We didn't pick all female schools. It was open to even fee-paying schools if they wished. So that model is actually going to be published, like openly published for others to use if it helps. I can send some information your way, but I don't know if I can put something in the chat in a minute. Sorry, I'm really ill prepared for this.
No, not at all. No, Keith, it was never planned to throw you on live. But thank you so much, because to me, what you've done and what you and your colleagues have done around large scale outreach, that's really hard. It's really hard for academics to do the outreach side into second level, into junior schools. And the model that you've had seems to be a very successful model for doing that on scale and really effectively with really stuff that kids are interested in. That really is a hard nut to crack. So I think that, you know,
with a caveat though, that there was 5 of us that volunteered about 60 hours a week, excluding travel, to do it. It was impossible to keep up. So our second solution to develop an online sort of MOOC where it would give the teachers the tools to deliver this within this weird thing in Ireland called transition year, which is not really a year of formal teaching. So it's like in between the GCSEs and A-level kind of, there's an extra year in Ireland where students can kind of trial other subjects. So we developed that, and that has been really successful. We've about 10,000 students taking that every year, and about 240 teachers delivering it, with the hope that those teachers would then go on and develop computing for more formal curricula. So, and that we failed at keeping it sustainable, because getting into your car and driving for 6 hours a day and then doing 6 hours of camps is not sustainable, to be fair.
No, but it's the trainer concept that's so powerful, because now you've got this reusable resource where the teachers in situ can do it. So that's fantastic. Yeah, thanks so much, Keith. You can
thank you.
You can relax now.
Thank you very much for this impromptu answer. Okay, so if there is no other question, maybe we can stop here to keep up with the time. And thank you again very much, Susan, for this very nice talk and very inspiring experience that you reported here.
You're very welcome.
See you soon in the next webinar, I believe. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thanks, everybody.
Somewhere.